This is America in the Morning from Westwood One. Good morning, I'm John Trout. It's Thursday, April 11th, 2024. Here's what's coming up on America in the Morning.
An attempt by former President Donald Trump to delay his hush money trial in New York has been rejected. Again, I'm Ed Donahue.
At least 3 people have been shot during an Eid event in Pennsylvania. I'm Haya Panjwani.
The Goon Squad in Mississippi sentenced on state charges. I'm Clayton Neville.
On Wall Street, inflation ticked up last month. Stocks sold off yesterday. Some investors are going to see buying opportunities today. I'm Jessica Ettinger.
Preteen stabbing offender seeks early release from mental health care.
For the first time, the government is setting limits on toxic so-called forever chemicals known as PFAS in drinking water. Jennifer King, Washington.
All ahead on America in the Morning. An appeals court has denied the third attempt by former President Trump's lawyers to delay the start of Trump's hush money trial in New York. Correspondent Ed Donahue has details.
For a third straight day, Trump's lawyers asked for a delay, and for the third straight day, they were told no. This time, the Trump legal team asked the appeals court to halt the case indefinitely while it fights to have the trial judge removed. They're challenging several rulings by Judge Juan Merchan. Trump's hush money trial is scheduled to start Monday and is the first of his 4 criminal indictments slated to go to trial. It also would be the first criminal trial ever of a former president. Trump is accused of falsifying business records to hide the true nature of payments made in connection with a scheme to suppress damaging stories about him during the 2016 presidential campaign. I'm Ed Donahue.
President Biden hosted a state dinner in honor of the Prime Minister of Japan. Correspondent Ben Thomas reports.
At the White House, the pomp and guest list of a state dinner. Hillary Clinton arriving alongside former President Bill Clinton.
We're having a good time tonight.
Business leaders, sports and entertainment stars, including Robert De Niro.
Robert, how are you feeling about the election?
What do you think? The event honoring Japanese Prime Minister Fumio Kishida. President Biden toasting the two nations alliance.
We may be divided by distance, but generations after generation, we've been brought together, the same hopes, the same values, the same commitment to democracy and freedom, and the dignity for all.
Embarking on a new frontier on elevate this unshakable Japan-U.S. relationship to even greater heights and hand it to the next generation.
Kishida with a nod to an American cultural icon.
Let me conclude with a line from Star Trek, which you all know. To boldly go where no one has gone before.
Ben Thomas, Washington.
At least 3 people were injured after gunfire erupted during a celebration in Philadelphia marking the end of Ramadan. Correspondent Haya Panjwani has an update.
Police said the shooting occurred around 2:30 p.m. at an annual Eid al-Fitr event in Philadelphia. Law enforcement at the scene said they heard about 30 gunshots when 2 groups of people started firing at each other and people began fleeing the scene. Officers took into custody 4 males and a female, and 4 weapons were recovered at the scene. One suspect, a 15-year-old boy who police said had a gun, was shot by police and sustained wounds to his shoulder and leg. It was not immediately clear what caused the shooting. I'm Haya Panjwani.
House Speaker to meet with Donald Trump when America in the Morning continues after these messages. The potential for severe weather has already prompted flash flood warnings and high wind advisories for areas of the South. This is America in the Morning. AccuWeather.com meteorologist Brian Thompson has the forecast.
The severe weather threat along the Gulf Coast will continue to march eastward today. We are going to see the severe weather threat from northern parts of Florida, from Tampa and Orlando up through Jacksonville, and extending up the southeast coast through Savannah, Charleston, and even back toward Raleigh, and even toward Charlotte. There could even be some stronger thunderstorms as we head through this afternoon into this evening. There will be some showers and storms extending farther north north, too. The threat for severe storms in the eastern Ohio Valley, including places like Columbus, Cleveland, and Pittsburgh, down toward Charleston, West Virginia. And there could even be some stronger storms toward Baltimore and D.C., too, and down into the tidewater of Virginia. So we're going to have a fair amount of the east covered in the threat for some severe weather today. Main threats will be damaging winds, hail, and flooding downpours. Could be some isolated tornadoes as well. On the northern side of the system, there will be some rain and some steady rain at times across much of upstate New York through northern New England. Off and on rain from Boston down to Philadelphia, although a steadier, heavier rain will tend to develop. There will be some rain, too, on the backside of the storm system through much of the Great Lakes, even back toward Chicago. Pretty wet day around Detroit and Indianapolis, too. But as you get west of the Mississippi, really not much precipitation to talk about. Dry across the plains, through the Four Corners, through the Rockies as well. Only precipitation we're watching out west is a little bit of rain in northwestern parts of Washington State and perhaps a few afternoon thunder showers in the Sierra. And that's the weather across America. In Tampa today, mostly cloudy and windy, some strong afternoon thunderstorms, high 81. Sunny and warm in Salt Lake City, high 71. That's the nation's weather. I'm AccuWeather.com meteorologist Brian Thompson.
Remember, you can follow us wherever you get your podcasts. Apple, Spotify, Amazon, and YouTube. Just search America in the Morning in your favorite listening app. I'm John Trout. 6 disgraced former Mississippi police officers were sentenced on state charges connected to the torture of 2 black men, Correspondent Clayton Neville reports.
The 5 former deputies out of Rankin County, Mississippi, and a former Richland police officer have already been sentenced on federal charges connected to the torture and beating of 2 black men. Their sentences ranged between 10 and 40 years behind bars after pleading guilty. Yesterday, the men were sentenced on state charges following guilty pleas. The day described by some as historic.
No police officer in the history of Rankin County has ever been held criminally responsible for harming anyone, let alone a black person.
Attorney Malik Shabazz represents the 2 victims.
These are the longest and strongest sentences in United States history for any police officers.
3 of the officers in what's been deemed the Goon Squad were sentenced to 15 years, another 10, and 2 others 20 years behind bars. The sentences will run concurrently with the federal time. I'm Clayton Neville.
House Speaker Mike Johnson has said he plans to meet with former President Trump later this week. Correspondent Sagar Magani has details.
A Trump campaign official says the ex-president and House Speaker Mike Johnson will have a news conference on election integrity at Mar-a-Lago Friday. The meeting comes with Johnson trying to keep the speaker's gavel amid a threat from hardliner Marjorie Taylor Greene, a top Trump ally.
Always considered her a friend.
Johnson says they don't disagree on philosophies.
We do disagree sometimes on strategy.
Greene's furious Johnson has worked with Democrats to pass legislation, which, given the slim GOP majority, is about the only way he can pass anything. Greene's threatened to hold a snap vote on ousting Johnson, who was once critical of Trump, but has tried to keep a close relationship with him since predecessor Kevin McCarthy lost the speaker's post. Sagar Magani, Washington.
Among the stories we're covering next, mortgage rates skyrocket. Ford issues recall. That and more when America in the Morning continues after these messages. Welcome back. This is America in the Morning. The Business Report is sponsored by Fisher Investments. Fisher Investments takes a disciplined approach with investing, helping clients navigate volatile markets. Learn more at FisherInvestments.com. Here's CNBC's Jessica Ettinger.
Wall Street opens this morning after a sell-off for the markets yesterday on a hotter-than-expected inflation reading for March. The Dow fell 400 points.
I'm not alarmist about it. You know, this market is just doing very normal things right now. You're playing with house money.
CNBC's Mike Santoli. The S&P 500 index still up 8% year-to-date. One big company saw its shares buck the plunge yesterday and hit a record high. Exxon as the price of U.S. crude oil has climbed 20% so far this year. Investors are digesting that consumer price index for last month. Inflation is being sticky.
The headline number expected to be up 0.3 is hotter than expected. It's up 0.4%. If you look at year-over-year CPI, we're expecting 3.4, hotter than expected, 3.5.
CNBC's Rick Santelli. And here's a look at some spots where inflation eased.
We got the inflation relief in places where it was predicted. The used car prices came down, new car prices came down, airline fares came down. All of that was as expected, which is kind of what makes this number a bit worrisome to me. But this is a number that is towards the high side, and it's going to put off rate cuts. That's the market's view, and I think it's correct.
So where is inflation sticking? Oil is higher, along with gas prices. And has your car insurance gone through the roof?
Motor vehicle insurance is going up by 2.6% on a monthly basis. The energy, the commodity prices are higher. There's the concern that those filter into core measures of inflation.
CNBC senior economics reporter Steve Leisman.
Without a locked-in mortgage rate, many home buyers are concerned this morning.
Well, it's the busy spring home buying season. And people who want to buy homes don't want to hear this unless they have locked in a mortgage rate. Real estate agents don't want to hear this either. Mortgage rates are back at their highest this morning since last Thanksgiving.
The average rate on the 30-year fix jumped nearly 0.25 percentage point this morning following the hotter than expected CPI report. We're now at 7.29%, and that's the average. It's the highest level since the end of November. It had crossed over to 8% in October briefly, which was the highest in a few decades.
CNBC's Diana Olick. On today's watch list, we get a fresh read on inflation at the wholesale level this time with the Producer Price Index for March. Earnings are coming from CarMax and the parent of Corona and Modelo Beer, Mondavi Wine, and Svedka Vodka. That's Constellation Brands. We find out how many people applied for unemployment benefits last week. And the Masters Golf Tournament begins this morning in Augusta, Georgia with round one.
CNBC's Jessica Ettinger. Ford has issued a recall. Nearly 43,000 SUVs involved in this one. Correspondent Julie Walker files this.
The Ford recall covers certain Bronco Sport SUVs from the 2022-23 model years, as well as Escape SUVs from 2022. All have 1.5-liter engines. The automaker says fuel injectors can crack and gas or vapor can leak or accumulate near ignition sources, possibly causing fires. But the recall remedy that Ford has does not include repairing the fuel leaks. Dealers will install a tube or let gas flow away from hot surfaces to the ground below the SUV. They'll also update software to disable the high-pressure fuel pump if it detects a leak. I'm Julie Walker.
Two psychologists testified Wednesday that Morgan Geyser, who at age 12 stabbed a classmate nearly to death to please the online horror character Slender Man, should not be released yet from a psychiatric hospital. Geyser, now 21, wants to leave Winnebago Mental Health Institute with conditions, but psychologist Brooke Lundbaum said the case has taken an unusual turn because Geyser claims she's been faking psychotic symptoms, which doesn't line up with the years of observation and treatment. When asked about if she would recommend Geyser for release, Lundbaum had this to say.
Have you ever come to the conclusion that Ms. Geyser is appropriate for conditional release currently? I have not.
Waukesha County Judge Michael Boren is hearing from experts to determine whether to grant the release. The hearing will resume today with cross-examination by Geyser's attorney. When we return on America in the Morning, autonomous vehicle crash, NTSB investigates after these messages. Welcome back. This is America in the Morning. The National Transportation Safety Board is investigating a March crash near Philadelphia that involved an autonomous vehicle. Correspondent Lisa Dwyer is following that story.
The NTSB says a Mustang Mach-E sport utility vehicle that may have been operating on a partially automated driving system hit two stationary passenger cars on Interstate 95 early in the morning on March 3rd. Both drivers of the stationary cars were killed. The Mach-E hit a parked Toyota Prius and rammed into a Hyundai Elantra. Ford said it is researching the crash and is cooperating with investigators. The crash is the second this year involving a Mach-E that the NTSB is investigating. The first occurred on February 24th in San Antonio, Texas. I'm Lisa Dwyer.
The EPA has finalized new rules aimed at reducing the public's exposure to toxic chemicals. Correspondent Jennifer King has details.
Perfluoroalkyl and polyfluoroalkyl substances have been used in nonstick pans, waterproof clothing, and firefighting foam like the kind used at Air Force bases. They don't degrade in the environment and have been linked to health issues like low birth weight, liver disease, and cancer. The new rules require utilities to test for PFAS, limit levels to between 4 and 10 parts per trillion depending on the chemical, and inform the public when levels are too high. It's a dramatic shift. Less than a decade ago, the EPA issued a health advisory that the levels couldn't exceed 70 parts per trillion. Now the agency says no amount is safe. The EPA and environmental health advocates say the rule will reduce serious illnesses and prevent thousands of deaths, but legal challenges are expected. Utility groups say it will cost billions of dollars to implement, costs that will be passed on to customers. Jennifer King, Washington.
America in the Morning for Thursday, April 11th, 2024 is produced by Alexander Hinton. Our senior producer, Kevin Delaney. I'm John Trout. This is Westwood One. This is America in the Morning from Westwood One. I'm John Trout. Coming up this half hour.
More last-minute attempts failed to delay Monday's scheduled hush money trial for former President Trump. I'm Lindy Kenyon in Washington.
House Republicans deal a blow to Speaker Mike Johnson as a colleague continues to call for his ouster. I'm John Stolness in Washington.
Inflation rose again last month. Sagar Magani, Washington.
Windows 11 gets a nifty new upgrade in the form of Moment 5. I'm Chuck Palm.
And Japan gifts the U.S. with a cherry on top. Back after these messages. Rain and high winds expected today for the first round of the Masters Golf Tournament in Augusta, Georgia. Here's today's forecast from AccuWeather.com meteorologist Brian Thompson on America in the Morning.
A powerful storm system moving northeastward across the Ohio Valley is going to bring rain to really much of the eastern third of the country today. And there will be some rain from much of the Ohio Valley and Great Lakes eastward into the mid-Atlantic and much of northern New England. The rain will be more intermittent from Boston down toward Philadelphia, although some steadier and heavier rain will develop into the nighttime hours tonight. Yet another rainstorm in what's been a wet stretch of the last couple of months across parts of the Northeast. Now, farther south, as you get toward the eastern Ohio Valley, including places like Pittsburgh, Columbus, and Cleveland, and extending southeastward toward Virginia, especially toward the Tidewater, Virginia, and down along the eastern Carolinas, down through Savannah and down to Jacksonville. That's where we're most concerned about the threat for severe thunderstorms as a cold front will be approaching with this storm system. Damaging winds, hail, isolated tornadoes all possible, and certainly some flooding downpours with some of these showers and storms too. But again, the rain on the backside of the storm extending all the way back toward Chicago, even a few showers around St. Louis, down to Memphis, and even back toward Little Rock could be a couple of morning showers too. But once you get farther west away from the storm, there really is not a lot of precipitation across much of the rest of the country today. Looks dry through the plains, much of the west as well. It's going to be pretty warm throughout the southwest, even up toward Salt Lake City in the low 70s today, and pretty warm from across the desert southwest from Phoenix to Yuma to Palm Springs, most places into the 90s this afternoon, so a little taste of early season heat. That's the nation's weather. I'm AccuWeather.com meteorologist Brian Thompson.
Follow us wherever you get your podcasts, Apple, Spotify, Amazon, YouTube. Just search America in the Morning in your favorite listening app. I'm John Trout. Former President Trump has suffered another setback in his efforts to delay his hush money trial in New York. Correspondent Linda Kenyon is following the developments.
It's the third setback this week for the former president, who's been trying to delay the case stemming from an affair with porn actress Stormy Daniels. Trump is charged with 34 counts of falsifying business records and criminally concealing a hush money payment to hide damaging information from voters ahead of the 2016 presidential election. Trump's attorneys challenged 3 rulings by Judge Juan Merchan. The judge's refusal to recuse himself, his refusal to delay the trial until the Supreme Court rules on Trump's presidential immunity claim in an unrelated case, and the judge's requirement that Trump seek permission before filing new motions before trial. 2 other attempts to delay the trial were already rejected by appeals judges earlier this week. One involved a gag order imposed on the former president. The other requested a change of venue to a more Republican-minded Staten Island rather than the more Democratic Manhattan. In that appeal, prosecutors said Trump's request for a change of venue came too late in the process. The gag order barred Trump from attacking witnesses, prosecutors, court staff, and the judge's family. Prosecutors said the gag order would protect the integrity of the trial, while Trump's attorneys said it would cause irreparable harm to their client's First Amendment rights. This latest in a series of 11th-hour attempts to delay the trial came as the former president's attorneys sought to stop jury selection from beginning on Monday. The former president could still appeal the denied motions to New York State's highest court, which may or may not take up those cases. Lindy Kenyon, Washington.
Republicans revolted against House Speaker Mike Johnson yesterday, refusing to allow a bill to come to the floor concerning foreign surveillance. Correspondent John Stolnis has more on the setback for Speaker Johnson as one colleague continues to call for him to be replaced.
19 Republicans went against their own speaker's wishes in blocking legislation to renew Section 702 of the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act, also known as FISA, from reaching the House floor. Earlier in the day, Johnson urged his colleagues to not only allow the bill to move forward, but to vote for its passage eventually.
It's critical we address these abuses because we don't want to be able to use or to lose Section 702 of FISA. It's a critically important piece of our intelligence and law enforcement in this country.
Former President Donald Trump urged conservatives to kill the measure. Section 702 allows the U.S. government to collect the communications of non-Americans outside the country without a warrant. However, critics say regular Americans' communications in the U.S. are sometimes caught up in these surveillance efforts. Johnson's harshest conservative critic, Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene, says it's a mistake for Johnson to move forward with it.
We do not believe in warrantless spying on the American people. Mike Johnson doesn't have the trust of the conference, and that's become very clear.
Taylor Greene has spent much of the last week calling for Johnson's ouster over deals he's made with Democrats to avoid a government shutdown, the FISA law, and Johnson's attempts to fund Ukraine's war against Russian aggression. She's calling for the speakership to be vacated like his predecessor Kevin McCarthy, and after meeting with Johnson for an hour yesterday, was undeterred in her mission to vacate the speakership, although she did not offer a timetable. Some of her Republican colleagues are against it, like Max Miller and Richard Hudson, both speaking to CNN.
Anyone who votes to vacate him should not be a member of Congress, in my opinion.
Obviously, we have to have a speaker, and any effort to remove the current speaker would put us in chaos. I think it would be a big mistake.
Speaking to the Christian Broadcasting Network this week, Johnson says he understands why Taylor Greene is frustrated, but that it would be a big mistake to vacate the speakership now.
We can't close the Congress down because that's what will happen. Sure. They will blame us, right? And so it's really a very dangerous thing to be waving around a motion to vacate right now when we've got to demonstrate that we can keep this country moving forward. Mm-hmm. And I hope that you realize that in the end, and I think others are trying to make that case.
John Stolnis, Washington.
Police in Philadelphia are investigating a shooting at an event to mark the end of Ramadan. Correspondent Clayton Neville reports.
As the holy month of Ramadan winds down for Muslims, about 1,000 people got together for a festive event on Philadelphia's west side. The celebration was held outside a mosque near a local park. Police were writing tickets when they heard gunshots.
They say approximately 30 gunshots. What we do know is there appear to be 2 factions within the park who are now exchanging gunfire. As the officers start to deploy into the park, they observe 3 males and a female running, and they stop those individuals, and we recover 4 weapons.
Philadelphia Police Commissioner Kevin Bethel says that officers engaged a 15-year-old who had a gun.
She fires, and that male receives a gunshot to his shoulder and his leg. The officer secures that weapon and then transports that child to the hospital.
The teenager clearly facing charges but expected to survive.
And so in total, we have 5 individuals under arrest, 4 who were carrying weapons, as well as the individual that our police officer fired and struck.
Concern in the community and the commissioner frustrated too.
Well, listen, I walked through this event and we know that the majority, 99% of the individuals at this event are good people who wanted to have a good time. And once again, we have young people engaging in gunfire who just really destroyed the sanctity of what happened.
A violent end to the month-long celebration for those at the event. An investigation into what exactly led to the shooting now begins. I'm Clayton Neville.
It's now 17 till. When we return on America in the Morning, prices rise, a look at the CPI, and a major upgrade for the Windows operating system. Those stories and more when America in the Morning continues after these messages. I'm John Trout. This is America in the Morning. Both President Biden and former President Trump had comments on the abortion ban ruling in Arizona. Correspondent Ed Donahue reports.
The 1864 law bans abortion in Arizona at all stages of pregnancy, with no exceptions for rape or incest. Abortions are allowed only if the mother's life is in jeopardy. Trump was asked if Arizona went too far.
Yeah, they did, and that'll be straightened out. And as you know, it's all about states' rights. That'll be straightened out. And I'm sure that the governor and everybody else are going to bring it back into reason, and that will be taken care of, I think, very quickly.
Trump does not want a national ban on abortions. He wants limits left up to states. President Biden was asked at a Rose Garden news conference for his message to Arizona voters.
Elect me. I'm in the 20th century, 21st century, not back then. They weren't even a state.
Ed Donahue, Washington.
6 former Mississippi police officers have been sentenced for participating in the torture of 2 men they had detained. Correspondent Haya Panjwani reports.
The law enforcement officers who attacked Michael Corey Jenkins and Eddie Terrell Parker in January 2023 had already been sentenced in federal court. The former lawman admitted to breaking into a home without a warrant after they received a call to a Rankin County deputy and complained that the 2 black men were staying with a white woman at a house in Braxton, Mississippi. The 6 white officers then tortured Jenkins and Parker in an hours-long attack that included beatings, repeated use of stun guns, and assaults with a sex toy before one of the victims was shot in the mouth. In federal court, the deputies expressed remorse for their behavior and apologized to the 2 victims. They agreed to sentences recommended by state prosecutors ranging from 5 to 30 years. I'm Haya Panjwani.
A former Trump Organization executive has been sentenced for lying during the Trump civil fraud case in New York City. Correspondent Julie Walker has details.
Alan Weisselberg, a retired executive in Donald Trump's real estate empire, was sentenced on Wednesday to 5 months in jail for lying under oath during his testimony in the civil fraud lawsuit brought against the former president by the New York Attorney General. Weisselberg, who's 76, pleaded guilty last month to perjury in connection with the suit. Asked if he wanted to address the court, he said, "No, Your Honor," and was escorted out in handcuffs. This is Weisselberg's second time behind bars. He served 100 days last year for dodging taxes. Weisselberg is likely to factor into Trump's upcoming hush money trial. Michael Cohen has said Weisselberg had a role in orchestrating the payments, but he has not been charged in that case. Julie Walker, New York.
According to the Consumer Price Index, inflation rose again last month. Correspondent Sagar Magani has the numbers.
Consumer prices outside the volatile food and energy categories were up 0.4% from February. The so-called core prices were up 3.8% measured from a year earlier. It's the 3rd straight month inflation was well above the Federal Reserve's 2% target and comes as central bankers are weighing when to cut interest rates this year and by how much.
The policy rate is likely at its peak for this tightening cycle.
Chair Jerome Powell said last week week if the economy kept moving as expected. The Fed anticipated rate cuts, but he's also stressed the Fed needs more evidence. Inflation is steadily easing. Today's report could end the prospect of multiple rate cuts this year. Sagar Magani, Washington.
Pack a few suitcases, make some sandwiches, put the kids in the car, and head for the airport. Yes, many families are planning that summer vacation. AP correspondent Rita Foley takes a look at what the airlines are saying about the upcoming season.
Delta Airlines says demand for travel is strong heading into the summer vacation season, and travelers don't appear to be worried by some of those scary incidents in the industry recently, like the panel that blew off a jet in flight and the tire that fell off another plane during takeoff. CEO Ed Bastian said Delta's best 11 days ever for ticket sales were during the early weeks of this year. Delta does have Boeing planes, but it does not operate any Boeing 737 MAX jets, the plane that suffered the much-publicized panel blowout on the Alaska Airlines flight this year. Delta is boosting profit by focusing more on premium passengers who pay the highest fares and raking in money from a credit card partnership with American Express. I'm Rita Foley.
If you're a PC user, Windows 11 is about to get a major upgrade this week. Correspondent Chuck Palm has the scoop on today's Tech Report.
Windows 11 is about to get a major new upgrade in a patch called Moment 5. In addition to normal bug fixes, some of the apps included with Windows 11 are getting additional features. The Voice Access app has a lot of changes, including the ability to use the feature across multiple displays. In addition, you'll be able to create custom voice commands and have a command to paste a predetermined section into a text document. Even the narrator is getting an update with additional voices. Snap layouts are allowing a range of apps on the desktop to swiftly move into place in an arrangement that makes sense. Even the Windows Photo app has now been gifted with a new AI-powered Magic Eraser. The Nearby Share feature will allow you to wirelessly connect and share files or website links with other devices. There's even new features to the AI Copilot, which allows additional plugins, including OpenTable, that can be used to get Copilot to make dinner reservations for you. Tell us what you think at allthetoptech.tech. I'm Chuck Palm.
Thursday sports on America in the Morning. Here's Robert Workman.
Baseball on Wednesday, the Orioles rallied past the Red Sox 7-5. Number one prospect Jackson Holliday drove in a run and started a double play in his major league debut.
Obviously, I would have liked to gotten a few hits, but I mean, the overall experience was pretty incredible tonight to be able to go out there and win and have an RBI. I mean, it's pretty awesome just to be here.
Jordan Westberg blasted a 3-run homer. Marlins topped the Yankees 5-2 for just their second win of the young season. Jake Berger with a 3-run whopper on his 28th birthday. Guardians nailed the White Sox 7-6 in 10 innings. Josh Naylor and his brother Bo each went deep in the 4th inning. Then they each came through with run-scoring knocks and extras. Bo with the walk-off single, all on National Siblings Day. Edouard Julien homered twice to lead the Twins over the Dodgers 3-2. Mariners hung a 5 spot in the 10th to bounce the Blue Jays 6-1. Cal Raleigh lit the fuse with a 2-run dinger. Royals kicked some Astros 11-2. Vinny Pasquantino homered and drove home 5. Diamondbacks tipped the Rockies 5-3. Eugenio Suarez with a 2-out, 2-strike, 2-run double in the top of the 9th. Padres pounded the Cubs 10-2. Jurickson Profar with a homer among his 3 hits and 3 RBI. Rays rocketed past the Angels 4-2, scoring twice in the first inning on 1 wild pitch from Jose Soriano. Giants knocked off the Nationals 7-1 to avoid a sweep at home. Rangers rode past the A's. Phillies shaded the Cardinals, and the Brewers ripped the Reds. Braves and Mets were postponed. NBA, the Dallas Mavericks clinched the Southwest Division crown, beating the Heat 111-92 for their 16th win in the last 18 games. Center Daniel Gafford, who made 33 field goals in a row last month, too short of the NBA record, is at it again. He's now made 22 straight shots. Nuggets got 41 points from Nikola Jokic as they sawed off the Timberwolves 116-107 to regain sole possession of first place in the Northwest Division. Thunder rolled over the Spurs 127-89. San Antonio without its top 4 scorers due to leg injuries, including Victor Wembanyama. The Suns scorched the Clippers 124-108. LA has already wrapped up the Pacific Division. Bucks stopped the Magic. Giannis Antetokounmpo out with a calf strain. The team says he'll sit out the rest of the regular season, which ends on Sunday. Cavaliers clipped the Grizzlies. Cleveland 1 win away from clinching a spot in the top 6 in the East. Hornets stung the Hawks, and the Nets beat the Raptors. NHL, Oilers drilled the Golden Knights 5-1 to crack the 100-point mark for a 3rd straight season. First time they've done that since the 80s. Blues bopped the Blackhawks 5-2 to stay in the playoff hunt, and the Coyotes nipped the division-leading Canucks 4-3 in overtime. That's Thursday Sports.
Thank you, sir. When we return on America in the Morning, cherry blossom trees ripped out of the ground in D.C. Japan responds after these messages. America in the Morning's back. Japan is gifting the United States 250 new cherry trees to help replace those that are being ripped out this summer as construction crews work to repair the crumbling seawall around the capital's tidal basin. Japanese Prime Minister Fumio Kishida made the announcement as President Joe Biden welcomed him to the White House for an official visit and state dinner. Biden said the gift will mark the 250th anniversary of the U.S. in 2026, adding,
"They'll be planted at the tidal basin, not far from the Martin Luther King Memorial. And like our friendship, these trees are timeless, inspiring, and thriving."
Senior White House officials said that when the Japanese learned that some of the trees would be felled due to the construction work, they immediately offered to provide saplings when the time was right. Apparently, the time was right. Thanks for spending your time with us today. America in the Morning for Thursday, April 11th, 2024 is produced by Alexander Hinton. Our senior producer, Kevin Delaney. I'm John Trout. This is Westwood One.